caffeine can improve your performance in long-distance triathlon by 2 to 4%. Now, you might not think that sounds like much, but that could be 30 minutes faster, and that is huge. But working as a registered sports nutritionist, I've seen so many triathletes get their caffeine strategy wrong, and this is a problem because it can absolutely kill your race. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to avoid the caffeine mistakes that will wreck your performance, and instead, how to use it to race and feel proud of your performance.
When I say caffeine, I suspect most of you think of coffee. It's probably the most famous, most used, and arguably the most loved by triathletes around the world. And yeah, coffee contains caffeine, but so do many other plants too. Caffeine is a naturally occurring substance found in over 60 different plant species, including tea leaves, cacao beans, and guarana. It's been consumed for centuries for its stimulating effect, where people realized it made them feel more awake and alert. And this is actually due to caffeine's ability to block adenosine receptors in the brain. Adenosine is a neurotransmitter that promotes sleepiness, so blocking it leads to increased alertness, can improve cognitive function and mood. Caffeine is one of the most researched supplements, and it's been shown to enhance endurance performance by 2 to 4%. That might not seem that impressive, but over the course of a long-distance triathlon, that percentage can translate to huge time savings. For instance, knocking off 20 minutes from an 8-hour race is massive and could easily be the difference between first and second place, or smashing through your previous personal best. Or it might be around 35 minutes if you were completing an Ironman in 15 hours. Now, there are 4 primary mechanisms through which caffeine enhances endurance performance. Caffeine affects the central nervous system, reducing the perception of effort and allowing athletes to maintain a higher intensity for longer. Caffeine enhances the mobilization and utilization of fatty acids as a fuel source, which helps to spare glycogen stores. This might be beneficial during Ironman events, where glycogen depletion could be a limiting factor. Caffeine can improve muscle contraction efficiency and delay fatigue, contributing to better performance during endurance events. By improving cognitive function, caffeine helps triathletes stay mentally sharp and focused, which could help with decision-making later in the race, as well as mental positivity. So it's great to think that you could use caffeine to get some pretty badass performance benefits, but there are some intricacies that you need to understand to properly leverage its benefits. Understanding the half-life of caffeine is super important because this is going to guide how frequently and how much you should be using during racing. The half-life is the time it takes for the concentration of caffeine in your body to reduce by half, which is between 6 to 8 hours for most people. However, individual variability can significantly influence this, so it might be different for you, but I'd suggest using this number as a benchmark. We'll go through how often you should be consuming caffeine during racing, but first we should talk about how much caffeine you need to use to actually get the endurance performance benefits from it. And this is super important because you want all of those awesome benefits while minimizing the chances of developing side effects. The recommended dose is 3 to 6 milligrams of caffeine per kilogram of body weight. So this means that if you weigh 70 kilos, your effective dose of caffeine is 210 to 420 milligrams of caffeine. Here's a breakdown of how much caffeine is in some common sports products, as well as coffee. And the important thing for me to highlight is that more is not always better. Going closer to 6 milligrams of caffeine per kilogram of body weight, or going above that, is just going to increase the risk of side effects like jitters, an increased heart rate, anxiety, and gastrointestinal upset. My advice would be to experiment with different doses during training to find what works best for you without causing negative side effects. If you're getting into that 3 to 6 milligrams per kilo range, you can be pretty sure that you're going to be getting the benefits even if you don't notice a specific difference. It's likely working away in the background for you and giving you all of that caffeine goodness.
Now, although we aren't specifically covering it in this video, carbohydrate loading is an essential part of your race strategy. But I know that carbohydrate loading can seem like a complicated topic, So I've created some free carb loading guides for you, which you can download from my website. This has templates for you to use and refine so that you can feel confident that you've got this down to a fine tee and perform as well as possible come race day. So go and download it now. Link is in the comments and description section of this video.
Using caffeine in your race nutrition strategy involves optimizing both timing and dosage. We'll go through a practical example now, but just to be aware, there is more than one way to do this. This is just one of the ways that I've used with triathletes that I've worked with, and it's gone really well, but you can use alternatives. About 2 hours before the race, have a strong cup of coffee or around 200 milligrams of caffeine. The aim here is to get into what's called the therapeutic window, where you're within that 3 to 6 milligrams of caffeine per kilo of body weight range. About 15 minutes before the race, have a gel with caffeine to bump up your levels and get you through the swim. During the race, the aim is to consume enough caffeine to counteract the half-life of caffeine. Roughly halfway through the bike, have 1 to 200 milligrams of caffeine, and this will give your caffeine levels a big boost back up. Then halfway through the run, again have 100 to 200 milligrams of caffeine, and that will see you through to the end. Now you absolutely could just start consuming caffeine later in the bike or the run and not take any beforehand if that's your preference. And rather than taking 1 to 200 milligrams of caffeine in one go, you could take frequent, smaller doses, so for example 30 milligrams of caffeine every hour. There's not a specific right or wrong answer here, and is really individual based on how well you tolerate it and what you prefer. You can also choose whatever source of caffeine that you want, although I wouldn't actually suggest drinking coffee during your race. There are caffeinated drinks, gels, chews, tablets, or even gum, and they'll all work well to provide a source of caffeine. If you want the quickest hit of caffeine, then caffeinated gum is the best, because you absorb caffeine through what's called the buccal route, which means that you miss the digestion and absorption process through your gut, and it's super speedy, with peak caffeine levels within about 15 minutes compared to 45 minutes if you use something like a tablet or gel. I get a lot of questions on this YouTube channel and through email, and one of the common ones that I get is, do I need to stop drinking caffeine in the run-up to a race? The answer is, thankfully, no. You don't need to. You can continue drinking caffeine before your race, and let's be honest, you're going to want to, because if you don't, you'll get caffeine withdrawals and you'll feel absolutely shit. There's no strong evidence that you need to reduce habitual caffeine consumption to get the benefits, so it's not something that I tend to advise, unless you're drinking about 5 cups of coffee a day, and then I'll tell you to drink less regardless of racing. While caffeine can be a powerful performance enhancer, it's not without its potential drawbacks. Common side effects can include tremors, a high heart rate, and every triathlete's run leg nightmare, stomach upset. To minimize your chances of this, practice your caffeine strategy during training sessions to identify your tolerance level and any adverse effects. When you do this, try to keep everything else the same so that you can isolate the effects of caffeine. By that, I mean have the same pre-session food, the same carb amounts, and only change the caffeine levels. If you get this nailed, then you can really unlock those performance benefits through caffeine, and it can be so helpful for bringing your Ironman times down. Now, caffeine is just one part of racing, and you really need to think about other critical nutrition aspects, like your race breakfast and your in-race fueling. And I go through that in more detail in this video.